ladies and gentlemen, we'll hand over to the MEC to start the briefing. In fact, before we do that, let me give you a glimpse of who is here from the department. I will start with the gentleman with the white t-shirt. Is the Chief Director Infrastructure, Mr. Duba. And then next to him...
Can you have them stand, please?
Okay. Johnny. Next to him is the Reverend Vetcher. When it comes to agriculture and everything, we talk to him. He deals with those things, and of course, rated matters. And then we've got Mr. Munare, also from infrastructure, and DDG Jogadi, curriculum. His first name is Monabesi, his surname is Jogadi, like I said. Next to him is Mr. Mkida. I'm not going to say good white, I'm not. Mr. Mkida, the DDG, IOM, and next to him is the DDG, Corporate Services, Mr. Mngoni Sihle. He used to be here in East London as a district director. Next to me is the head of department, Mr. Mashubandile Kwase. Next to him is the MEC. Of course, we all know the MEC. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're going to hand over to the MEC to take us through, and then as soon as we're done, we're going to open a session for clarity-seeking questions. We are aware that others have asked for one-on-one. We'll also accommodate those. When we go to the clarity-seeking questions, we'll prefer that when you're asking your question, or of course we know you, JJ, you must tell us that you are JJ from, so that we can know who we're dealing with. Thank you very much. MEC, over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Program Director, Mr. Mtima. Let me first take this opportunity to welcome all of you, welcome the media houses that has been invited to be part of this discussion today. Let me welcome the top management of the department, the people of the province, the country in general, our stakeholders in education with direct interest of what happens in the sector, and also our parents whose interest is vested on the future of their own kids and how the schooling system in the country and the province, to be precise, responds to the dire needs of the parents that have hope and faith on the public quality education that government must provide, of course, with the element of the private education. Today we have convened this briefing to provide an update on the state of readiness by the Eastern Cape Department of Education for the opening of schools in the 2023 academic year. This we do in order to account to the people of the province and as well at large as the people who have been entrusted with the responsibility of providing basic education to all learners of this particular province. It's always critical that during this period we make some reflections as to how we have been able to conduct the business of the people, because you'll remember that we have since declared education as a societal matter. It's no longer a departmental issue. So from time to time there must be intervals of gauging and making a barometer on what should be the line of march moving forward, and how have we been able to master the art and skill of being the custodians of the lives of those young people that are in our institutions of learning in the province. We are going to begin with the learner support material, which is a key component of ensuring that schools are ready for us to resume the task ahead of us. We have been in ensuring that teaching and learning takes place at the very first day of the schooling, and the department developed a plan for the delivery of the learner-teacher support material in the form of workbooks, textbooks, stationery, before schools open for the current academic year. Indeed, the department has managed to deliver according to the plans, thus positioning all the department's schools to commence the 2023 academic year with the required resources to support the teaching and learning process. Just a second, you remember that last year we were on the back foot on this one, and we had to develop a response plan and a turnaround plan on how to reverse that saga that we have sometime last year. And therefore, this is the plan that we are talking about now that has actually yielded these statistics that I'm going to give to you. Currently, as we are today, the current status of delivery in terms of the learner support material in the province, we have delivered workbooks at 99% now, which just few individual schools which must be concluded today and probably by tomorrow. So the textbooks that we have given in terms of the rollout plan, as you understand that we once convened you in one of the warehouses in Wilsonia sometime last year at the end of the year, we are at 98.9% even there. So we don't have a crisis in terms of the textbooks that must be at our schools on next week. And in terms of the stationery, we have moved quite very efficiently. 7 districts out of 7 districts out of 12 that we have are at 100% now. We don't have an issue with stationery. Out of 12, seven of them is 100%, and the rest is occupying as 96% in terms of the delivery of the learner support material, stationery in particular. We are going also we have already developed a mop-up exercise to accommodate the actual enrollment variations occasioned by the late applications and also walk-ins that are often characterizing the beginning of every academic year. Why we are bringing this to yourselves is that it's gonna be very difficult for you to isolate the schooling system in the country outside of the broad economic and spatial development that is happening in the country. Because remember, kids are always following where their parents are working, and hence sometimes you have others coming back as walk-ins because they were in Cape Town, they were in Joburg, they were in Durban. Some interprovincial, they were in East London, now they are going back home. So I'm saying we have tried by all means also within the learner support material to provide such eventuality, precisely because of the environmental study that we have made, that we are a province with a special type from all the levels that we have. So hence I'm saying we needed to tighten up all the loose ends. In terms of the learner admissions, which also has been a critical component in the schooling system in the province for the past 5 years, if you'd remember. In terms of the learner admissions, the department is obliged to ensure that all schools going age children are to get a place to fulfill their ambitions, to pursue their learning experiences. Our focus are children playing for the admission in the entry gates, your grade 1, for example, and grade 8. We are always challenged on that one. not because you don't have schools again there, but because of sometimes relocation of parents moving from one area to another, for example, moving from some of the districts to metros in search of job opportunities. And that on its own has got a development that must be accommodated in the context of education. Hence I'm saying, when you talk development, you must be a bit broader and locate education as a sector within the broader scope of the development that is happening at that particular level. We have been able to make sure that the policy as required, the learners should apply for admissions and be duly admitted and placed in schools by the end of September of every year for the upcoming academic year. It is worth recording that learner admission processes has been successfully managed and completed, including placement of all learners of 9 out of 12 districts that we have in the province. You would also remember that the provisioning has been made to manage all cases of unplaced learners whose application and admission processes could not be finalized within the time frame cited above until December 2022 recess. The department established district learner admission committees with the support of the Eastern Cape DOE Provincial Office. This was done to ensure the quick response support to both parents and also respective areas. There are 3 districts with outstanding learners to still be admitting in our schools. Is Buffalo City Metro, Nelson Mandela Bay, and Sarah Batman. Last year, there were 4, including Joe Gabi, in particular the Alwal North area. But because we have been able to create a new school for Alwal North, Joe Gabi High, then we don't have that much of a crisis now this year, because we created a new school for Alwal North, which is Joe Gabi High, to accommodate that emerging increase of learners because of the migration patterns that I was talking about. Again, here in Buffalo City, we created another new school last year so as to absorb the pressure points of those learners that are moving from either outskirts of the province to the metros because of the population migrations that are happening. So we are currently dealing with that. It's not that much of a pressure point as the minister was articulating in Gauteng yesterday, because you could see that the country is having this phenomenon of unplaced learners, precisely, especially in urban and semi-urban areas. That has got more to do with the economies and spatial development that I was talking about. As today, 1,020 learners spread across the 3 districts are yet to be placed. It is expected that the district learner admission centers committees shall dispense with this number and allocate them to schools that still can accommodate them, with the aim of ensuring by the end of January, all admissions shall have established or effective teaching and learning to take place. As schools open, it will be clear to which schools can accommodate more learners in their schools enrollment. The department had to come with a plan to curb the rate of this challenge. A new school, as I said, in Joe Gabi has been established just to make that reduction. But I would also want to emphasize on this one. Part of the problem of the learner admissions in the country has got more to do with the competitive nature of the schooling system you have in the country, not in the province. What you can call parent choices. A parent chooses to bring a school here in Sterling, living in Mdantsane, for example, and leaving schools with vacancies in Mdantsane, precisely either because of the curriculum design of that particular school, or because of the performance systems of schools that vary from one school to another. Because there is no parent that will choose a school that is doubtful in terms of performance. And that is the issue that the country in general is confronted with. So hence you'd find admissions in various areas varies. Whilst you have got vacancies, for example, in Dujwa, but you have got fully fledged admissions in Butterworth. I'm just citing an example. So there is that dialectics, there are that dialectics that are currently underway in the context of admissions, which the HOD and the team are working on it, because at times they go with how we administer schools. At times they go with how we administer schools, how schools respond to the needs and demands of the communities that they serve. So it's quite a dynamic and a competitive kind of an environment, which at times make parents to choose awkward schools for their own kids. The third element is the scholar transport, which also is one of the key strategic areas of focus that we needed to resolve, so that we can be able to deal with the school readiness that we're talking about today. For 2023-2024 financial year, the number of learners to benefit in the scholar transport service is 103,000 learners. The Department of Transport has introduced a new system that integrates well with our own SSRs. This has created an improvement in the management of the scholar transport data. Both departments are collaborating to ensure that the new system is managed well and to eliminate all inefficiencies caused by incorrect data. Allow me to indicate to you that as we are seated here, all our schools have submitted the data for the coming financial year, including the proposed routes, and verification and approval has been done automatically by now. The department introduced the concept of walk-in buses. This has been done through the PWP, wherein parents or adults accompany learners to schools to ensure they arrive safe to and from schools. There are 21,174 learners from 376 schools that will benefit from this particular program. Those who travel less than 10 kilometers to schools, but the routes are the routes have been always been identified and are the ones that have been can classify as dangerous ones, which are falling into this particular category. So hence this particular policy that we have developed, just to ensure that they arrive safe, they are taken back safe, and because you'd understand that part of the strategic enemy of government generally now is crime. Crime is prevalent in the country, so you can't allow kids to travel alone where you are unable to provide transport on them, and we must mitigate that particular challenge. Hence I'm saying you must develop as much mitigative factors as possible so that your mandate of executing teaching and learning is not obstructed by any immediate challenge that government might be confronted with. Whether it's crime, is poverty, is what you needed, you have your plans according to what you want to achieve. Lastly, on school nutrition, the department provides meals to 1,626,465 learners in quintile 1 to 3 public ordinary schools, as well as targeted special schools. The provisioning for payment of 12,586 volunteers, food handlers, has been included in the transfer of funds to school. This is another grey area which government has made an effort more on it. Because remember, for you to respond to what you can regard it as access in the context of education, you needed to have some interventions of this particular nature, especially when you have got almost 40% of the population of the country living below the belt of poverty. So the system itself becomes a beacon of hope, not just to stabilize schools, but equally to respond to the triple crisis you have of unemployment, poverty, and inequality in the society that you have. So the ministry itself must be able to be realistic in terms of what is happening in the society. You can't run schooling system outside of broad challenges of the society in general. So hence I'm saying this is another area which I think we have been able to consolidate government and be able to make a significant contribution on it in order to secure a resounding performance of the schooling system we have in the province. In order to improve food security of learners in the current financial year, it has also included 2,080 schools for the provisioning of breakfast to 366,102 learners. That's another new version. We have brought in a breakfast now, again precisely because you have got kids that are coming from vulnerable poor families who might have not taken a supper last night, who might have not taken a breakfast in the morning before they come here. And for you to be able to again to achieve what you want to achieve, you must then be able to see how best do we respond to some of these matters. Yes, I agree, we may have not taken all of them, but this is a pilot project to ensure that if it works quite very well for us, how do we then mobilize resources to ensure that it becomes an overarching beneficiation to all institutions that we have in the province, and also all the learners that we have equally in the province. It has been a sustainable improvement of the increase from 19,000 learners prior to 2021, and the province will continue focusing on any viable opportunities to extend the gains of the breakfast program and strengthen, as I've said already. It is impossible to teach a hungry child, and therefore the department continues to support and implement the school nutrition program. In terms of the human resource provisioning, would want to report, ladies and gentlemen, that a post bucket of 52,817 we have declared in 2023 academic year. Subsequently to that, a PPN management plan was developed with the following critical dates. From the 16th to 17th January, we will have staff meetings to discuss the PPN as it has already been loaded to schools. On the 18th to 24th of January, the identification of additional educators per school will be happening. On the 25th of January to 27th, issuing of letters informing additional educators of their status. And on the 1st to 10th of February, issuing of placement letters to additional educators. On the 13th to 28th of February, the movement of additional educators as per their placement. Now, this is done in order to ensure that you have got proper educators to proper subjects to proper schools. You must be able to balance your human resource, which what then becomes the need of the institution of learning. For example, if there is an abundance of maths teachers in school X school Y does not have, you needed to spread that so that you are able to get as much possible your human resource accordingly. The department expects that by the end of February 2023, additional educators will be moved to where there are vacancies so that the teaching and learning can happen effectively and meaningfully, as well as to ensure there are no learners without a teacher. Where vacancies exist after placement of additional educators, appointments will be made. However, the appointment process will be closely monitored by the head office to ensure that districts do not oversubscribe to their post allocation. During the identification and placement of processes, district directors together with the HR will monitor areas of need and make immediate interventions that will ensure that the teaching and learning is not delayed. We want also to emphasize that in as much as you have got this management plan of the already existing human resource personnel in schools, the HOD has got all the rights to appoint a temporal educator where there is a need of a vacancy. We can't be waiting for this process. Because, for example, there are schools that are going to have vacancies as we speak. And therefore, schooling must start next week, and that placement talks to the ones that are within the system, does not talk to those that might be recruited as mitigation for purposes of temporal educators or temporal staff, to ensure that because of this placement, there are no kids that do not have teachers in front of them. So we do have that plan which we are dealing with. In terms of the infrastructure provisioning program director, during 2022 academic year, the Department of Education implemented and completed the following projects. 248 sanitation facilities, we have dealt with them. 278 water services, we have dealt with them. 17 electrification infrastructure in 17 schools, we have dealt with them. 319 classrooms to 32 grade R classrooms, we have also dealt with them. 27 libraries, 33 maintenance projects, and 23 fencing projects to various schools. We have already dealt with those projects that I'm talking about. As you have been observing, our aggressiveness in ensuring that infrastructure in the province is improved, because there is a relationship between infrastructure development and the quality of the education that we must provide. The department is also embarking on the process of relocating prefabricated classrooms from various completed schools to schools of need in terms of the additional learning space to address the overcrowding of schools for better teaching and learning. A total of 75 prefabricated classrooms shall be relocated by the 31st of January to 18 schools in the province, namely Krisani Public Schools in Krisani West, Joe Gabi, SS, the one that I was talking about in Joe Gabi, in Alwa North to be precise, Mtikaka, SS, and other schools of that are dire need of additional prefabricated infrastructure. Additional prefabricated structures are currently under construction, mostly above 50% completion. At 16 schools, earliest completion of that will be the 31st of January. Schools that are gonna benefit out of that is Ngobesizwe Senior Secondary School, Engcobo Village, Jongindaba Senior Secondary School, Dinizulu High Schools, and also they are above 95% completion, some of them. A total of 59 storm damaged projects were also addressed and completed in 2022, with 12 projects still under construction, estimated to be completed by the 31st of January 2023. We are also we're having a dislodging program on the rollout of 407 schools, which has been divided into 24 clusters to address overflowing sanitation pits in various schools across the province. The site handover will commence on the 17th of January to be completed by the 25th of January. So by next week, we'll be busy in terms of ensuring that infrastructure is up to scratch in terms of these programs that have already been lifted. Again, from an infrastructure point of view, the department has to address the need of maintenance of schools in the province as an incentive to high-performing schools, high-enrollment schools. We have got 120 schools which were identified, 10 per district, which will be provided with minor maintenance of their infrastructure. The 120 minor maintenance program was formed, and all 120 schools have been assessed by now, and the appointment letters of 11 professional services providers has been concluded. So, whilst we are building new schools on the other side, we have got also a plan of maintaining the already existing ones because of the nature of some of the schools that were dilapidated. So we targeted 120 schools this time around. And all those 120 schools must be renovated between now and the 30th and the end of the financial year, so that we are able to clean up all the problems relating to infrastructure in the province. The stakeholder engagement at the various districts has been completed for buy-in and support, and the department has engaged the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure for the utilization of their labor component to assist in addressing this particular need. Schools in need of fencing are also currently being addressed at 191 schools. 120 schools has already been implemented, and 71 of them by Kucha Development Agency across the province. For the 120 schools, PSP has already been appointed, and 22 schools are currently under construction. And then the plan is to hand over 10 schools between the 16th of January 2023 and the 20th of January. So in essence, by next week, we must be handing over in the province 10 schools, which in our view is a milestone that we think makes a difference. And if you follow us quite very well, you will see that we have handed over not less than 30 schools last year that were completed via the infrastructure. So it's something that probably we needed to appreciate. Again, Program Director, we want to report that the progress made by Kucha Development Agents on the 71 schools indicated that 69 of them currently under construction and will be completed by February. So in essence, we have turned the sector into a construction site. We have turned the sector into a construction site if you follow the statistics that have been given here. 44 schools in need of sanitation are currently being addressed by the department, and 48 awards were issued and site handovers are underway. That's again, which then indicates that the department has been at its own toes in ensuring that we turn the image of the province. The Eastern Cape Department of Education has been taken into court, if you remember, by 5 schools. And they were since being treated and addressed through an emergency program. These are earmarked for the site handover with effect from the 17th of January to 20th of January again. Such school is Kochana SPS in Amatole, Zolenqaba SPS in Amatole East, Kwanchu JSS at Amatole East, Tumkhana SS in OR Tambo Coastal, and Gwebichala SS in Amatole East. So we are also responding to some of the litigations that we had in the past, so that we don't appear to be reneging in terms of the law. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity and thank you for honoring the invite, and also make you aware that in a few days the matric results of the country will be issued by the minister. And let me make this opportunity to encourage our learners as they eagerly await for their results to make sure that they use available resources provided by the department in the form of psychosocial support for any learner who might feel overwhelmed during this waiting period. Please do make sure that we are informed and will be there. This also goes for all of those who will need to make it to the line, and please talk to officials of the department as well as to the parents to ensure that there is a bit of social consistency. This is a very sensitive period, HOD. Some take their lives once they don't make it. Some feel they are useless because they have not passed. Some parents has their own ambitions about their own kids, and by extension, assuming that the learner also share the same sentiments, which is not there. And we need, therefore, to caution everybody. Let's support kids without reservation. Let's not put more pressure on them that is undue. Let's make sure that as families, we take responsibility for our own kids. We make sure that as families, we close ranks, make them comfortable, encourage them, motivate them, make sure that they are properly prepared for any eventuality that they might come across as they go to institutions of higher learning sometime this year. So that all the gaps that could be there, either because of the creation of their own background, some might not even have registration fees for their own tuition. We need to close up that gap. Some might not even have clothes, for that matter, to go to institutions of learning. We also need to cushion each other around such issues so that we can have a better appreciation that we are a diverse society with all challenges of the economy that is not growing, which we were just discussing with the HOD as we are getting in, that probably at a strategic level, there is going to be a need of a serious discussion in the country. Whether can you sustain a welfare state with a non-growing economy in the country? That's another debate for another day at another platform. But I'm saying you have got that process that you needed to look into. Unfortunately, we are a sector that is overarching in society. There is no village that does not have a school. You might not find all the departments of government in each and every household, but this one is there. So that's why you must always be sensitive when you deal with the public about it, because this is the only department that they relate with. You might not find a clinic in a ward, but I can assure you there is no village in any ward in this country that does not have a school. So our mandate then is overstretched a bit, and we needed to be alive to that reality. My apologies for having taken a bit of time, Program Director. I just wanted to put matters into play. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. MEC. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, JJ. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a round of questions. We may go for 2 rounds of questions. So we'll start with, what I'll do is I'll note you and then you'll go as per the noting. I can see JJ, who else? Abo, I can see Ronald. So, Queenie. So in that order, comrades, your colleagues, start with JJ, then Abo, Queenie, then Ronald. Thank you.
Mandithatha ithuba ndibulise kuwe-MEC nakwisikhokelo sesebe education nakwi-colleagues zam. On the 18th, the taxi industry has threatened a shutdown, that they won't be transporting any kids or anything. And as much as it's a transport issue, it's also going to affect you because transport is basically carrying out your service as far as transporting of learners is concerned. What is your comment on that? And secondly, you are an advocate for hostels as a way of creating viable schools in the province. In the speech, I haven't seen anything talking about how many schools that are opening as hostels this year, as in to accommodate learners. So, thank you. So, are you able to tell us if, as the schools are opening next week, there will be schools that will be opening as hostels or together with hostels, or even schools that had hostels whose capacity has been increased in order to take in more learners? Thank you.
No, sir. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Lamula, that side. Ronald.
Good morning, Ronald Masila from ENCA. Just a quick update from you, MEC, with regards to the amount of schools we have in the province. And out of that amount, did we have any schools that have closed or shut down? And then my last question is on schools being vandalized. Do we have a correct number on it? Thank you.
Queenie, you'll be the last one. Thank you.
Mandibulise ku-MEC nesigaba sakhe kubongiwe Mandoyi we-BCM TV. Njengoba ndimamele ke MEC kwi-learner report, okokuqala ndizawufuna nje i-question emfutshane nje ukhona into yobana njengokubana kumele izikolo zivule nge-18 njengeripoti yakho etsho into yobana ngala mhla we-18 kuzabe kuvula izikolo kwaye kuqhutyeke kwane-education. Ndifuna uqonda ke ngoku malunga nezikolo zethu zaselokishini ixesha elininzi siye zibe kanti zirejistarisha abantwana kude kube iveki yesibini. Ingabe le challenge injalo okanye ingumceli onjalo ekuhlaleni ithini indlela yokuhandlisha lo mcimbi lowo onjalo? Okwesibini, kwicala le-stationary itsho iripoti into yokubana out of i-district ezi-12 i-7 ino-100% and then kube no-5 oseno-96%. Bona mhlawumbi aba bezo zikolo ndiqinisekile into yobana mhlawumbi kubo again kwezo zikolo ziyi-5 izophinda ibe ngumcelimngeni into yobana iqala kwesikolo kube kanti kuthatha i-delay. Mhlawumbi noba izawuthatha ixesha kangakanani zibe kanti ziyakhavarisheka ezo zikolo. Okwesithathu, ibe into ye-school transport othe wayichaphazela. Bendifuna uqonda ke njengobana kuthiwa abantwana abazawuthi babhenefithe kwesi school transport ngu-103,000. Ingaba kubalwa mhlawumbi abantwana aba bebesebekhona konyaka ophelileyo okanye kulungiselelwa nabantwana abazothi babeyiphathe esikolo kulo nyaka soqalayo ka-2023? Okwesine nokokugqibela ndizongena kulaa mcimbi kaNutri. As much as siwazi uba uNutri naye ulungiselelwa abantwana ngoontloko zabantwana esikolweni. And then ndifuna uqonda ke ngoku kulaa mcimbi kaNutri ingaba kweli cala le-department uNutri ithini indlela mhlawumbi esiqonda intobana ulungiselwa ngayo siyayi-understand intobana xa kusandovula isikolo ezinye izikolo zivula zingenayo ilantuka imali for ulungisela abantwana for uNutri. Ingaba kule veki ke ngoku kuzabe kuvulwa ngayo ikhona indlela ekujongwe into yobana izikolo zikwazile useva into yobana kule veki yokuqala imali kaNutri kangeni sibebe kanti abantwana bayakwazi utyiswa njengoko nesikolo ke sizama udlala inxaxheba kuba abantwana mabafunde betyile esusweni. Enkosi.
Thank you very much. On the issues raised by JJ, the Premier, as well as MEC for Transport and MEC for Education and MEC for Economic Development and Finance, are handling the matter with the
relevant stakeholders with the taxi associations around their concerns. So there's already a meeting that was scheduled for today, and that meeting is also going to be taking place again on Sunday. So there is some discussions taking place between the four departments, OTP, Provincial Treasury, DOT, and the DOE, to try and find solutions to that. But also we have handed over the data to Department of Transport of the learners that have already applied for scholar transport. It's loaded in the SASAMs, and that data has already been forwarded to Department of Transport for them to also verify and also put it through their own systems and try and ensure that learners are ferried. The commitment that has been made by Department of Transport is that they will ensure that all the learners are ferried with effect from the 18th of January next week. And they will, whilst on the one hand they are also looking at the review of the current contract, because I think it's coming to an end. They are starting to work on the new tender, but they have committed that they will be able to ferry the learners as from the 18th. But the issue of the threat by the taxi industry is being handled at a political level, led by the Premier. On the hostels, we don't have hostels that are ready as of now, but there are those hostels, there are very few that we have started to construct. But with effect from 2022, we have taken a decision that we will have every year a number of hostels that we start constructing, especially in high enrollment schools and highly performing schools, and those schools that were amalgamated as part of rationalization. So those schools required that we should also put up some hostels there. I think we started with about, I think there were 22 mega schools that were built, but we have not put hostels as another phase of completing those schools. So currently the infrastructure team and our PSU are working on that planning of those hostels. But I know that there is a hostel that is being under construction as we speak in Tsokota. I think it's going to be about 700 about plus 700 beds that will be part of that, other part of that project. So we have no completed hostels yet, but we do have a plan to deal with these hostels going forward. In terms of the increase, in terms of the capacity to accommodate more learners, I think in the statement the MEC has already articulated that to accommodate additional learners, we are procuring additional temporary classrooms. And we have 28, for instance, that we are refurbishing, those that are in transit. We have already appointed a service provider to refurbish them so that they can be relocated to where they are needed. Already there's a list of schools where we will be supplying those temporary classrooms. There are schools that we have already completed in terms of construction of the brick and mortar. For instance, your Atwell Madala, I think there are 26 classrooms that have been built there. So we're moving about 22 temporary classrooms that are in that school to other needy schools. And that work has already started with the help of the Department of Public Works. So we're moving them to different schools. There are schools, I think there's a school in Beggersdorp that has been completed, and one in Jamestown. We're moving those temporary structures, especially to schools in Alwan North, to address that problem. In the 1020, the 1020, that has been mentioned here as pressure point in terms of learner admissions. That number has been reduced through the decision that we have taken to introduce the Joe Kabi Senior Secondary in Alwa North. And we have, as part of that, this movement of temporary classrooms has actually catered for 458 learners that were not going to be having spaces in Alwa North this year. So we've taken that decision to create that school so that we accommodate that 458 learners that were not going to be accommodated in Alwa North. We're also going to be adding some temporary space, additional spaces, that is temporary classrooms, Alwa North High, to also accommodate that pressure. So that we don't start a new school with 458 learners at grade 8, because that school is going to be abnormal within a few years. Immediately they introduce other grades, your grade 9, your grade 10. That school is going to be abnormal and very big. So we want to cushion it by ensuring that we also add some classrooms at Alwa North High. So there is that process that is underway, even in other districts where there are cost pressures, there are pressures of accommodation. So that's how we'll be managing the issue of increased capacity. Even here in Buffalo City and Nelson Mandela and Sarapatman, where there's an influx of learners from outside, that's how we'll be managing the issue of the capacity challenges. In terms of the schools that have been vandalized, I might not have a complete picture, but we, in our engagement with our district directors, the most affected area, I think, is Buffalo City and Nelson Mandela in particular. Just in Nelson Mandela, 44 schools were vandalized over Christmas. And I think the cost, when they estimated it, is more than $500,000 of the work that needs to be done to put those schools back to normality. So, and that's the reason why we started the process of rolling out fencing program last year. The 191 that the MEC has spoken to, with the 71 that is handled by ECOHA, and the 120 that is handled by the Department of Education. And all that work has already started. And it's going to take us a little bit of time because of budget constraints to cover all the schools that are affected, especially by vandalism. But we want to prioritize those areas that are prone to vandalism in terms of the fencing program. So we'll continue with this fencing program even in the next financial year, 2023-2024, and going forward. But that's what we have currently done. Just for 2022-2023 financial year, is 191 schools targeted for fencing, and that is already underway. In terms of these learner admissions, I think the MEC has touched on this already in his presentation. That we might not be able to avoid this thing, but we have tried to introduce a system to ensure that learner admissions are completed at least by September, October, in preparation for the ensuing year. But we know that there is movement of parents, either due to the transfers and all that takes place towards the end of the year, but also the demand for parents to get their learners to better performing schools. It creates all sorts of problems for us. Areas like your Buffalo City, your Nelson Mandela, your Queenstown, your Mthatha are always areas where people are flocking, and that's where we always experience this problem, and Alwa North, because all those rural towns around Alwa North, they tend to flock in Alwa North for better schooling. So we continue to have that. We are not going to get out of that for quite some time. But what we are working on, we are trying our level best to ensure that performance in school is more or less uniform. So there's no differentiation in terms of performance between your former model C schools and other ordinary schools. Because that's why parents are moving their kids from one school to another. It's because of that poor performance. But we're trying to our level best to manage that. So we will be dealing with that on Monday, Tuesday, and some in the first week. But we want to ensure that by the second week, learners are placed such that we focus on the teaching and learning, because our intention is to start teaching and learning on the first day. The district committees for admissions were established, and they'll be finalizing that work, especially on Monday, with all the principals and teachers reporting to work on Monday. But districts have been working on this throughout, but they'll be able to fast track that process Monday, Tuesday, and on Wednesday next week. Stationary, we're only left with about 198 schools in terms of stationery that have not been delivered. And that work is already continuing as we speak. Our distributors are working on that. And I think it's only few districts, I think it's Alfonso East, OR Tambo Inland, and very few in OR Tambo Coastal, as well as the Joga that were, and Christian West. These are the 5 districts where these 198 schools are located. We were given the manufacturers and as well as the distributors a clear deadline that would like today this distribution to be completed. Failure to do that will then have to ensure that by the 18th, all the schools have received their stationery. At least the work that has been done by colleagues led by DDG MEC Gade and the Reverend Fletcher and the team, who have pushed very hard these manufacturers and these distributors to ensure that all the stationery is in schools. At least we have a different picture altogether as compared to the picture we had last time. The scholar transport, the figures accommodating new learners, we have asked most of the schools to load in the system the new applications, because there's that cohort of learners that is moving out, those that have passed grade 12. They'll be taken out of the system altogether. So new learners in Zambia will be coming in. So we have requested schools and districts to load in the system those new applications, and work has been continuing to look at that, approving them, and I think we have 98,000 plus that has been forwarded to Department of Transport. But Department of Transport, because last year, in the current financial year, they can only accommodate 103,000 because of the budget constraints. We have agreed that we'll stick to that 103,000 in terms of the numbers that will be able to accommodate in the current financial year, unless as we move forward they are able to get additional funding to meet the needs that are there, that are beyond the 103. But as of now, those that have been able to be processed by the system is about 98,000. But that number we know is not a fixed number, it's continuing to grow, and it's likely to go beyond even the 103. But the 103 is the limit that the Department of Transport is having due to financial constraints. Will schools be able to feed learners next week? Yes, they'll be able to fix the learners. I think the last tranche was part of the run yesterday, and we're expecting that must appear in the accounts of the schools by Monday the 16th, and they'll be able on the 18th to feed the learners. Even if there might be a glitch in terms of that, there's still some funds that are remaining from the previous tranche that we have transferred to schools. They'll still be able to accommodate that next week if there are glitches, because we have experienced a lot of glitches because of this load shedding that is affecting the network and to bus system in terms of the transfers. You process these transfers, who's approved, who's team, but load shedding affects to bus, and some are transferred and some are not transferred. But it's something that we're working on with provincial treasurers to address that. But we're comfortable that schools will be able to provide school nutrition next week.
Thank you very much. I think the head of department was able to cover all the questions. Do we have a follow-up? Abo, number one. Who's the second one? Mr. Masinda, please. Thank you. Alcoa.
Oh, okay, mandibulele thuba ndibulele ku MEC HOD negqiza lakhe nabi-colleagues. Igama lam ndingu-Abo Ifane Nguginya, ndisuka kwiSolezwe leSixhosa. Kule nto ibithe ndikhumbule nto apha ku-HOD, kule nto agqibothetha ngayo yento yezikolo ezivandalayiziweyo. Kunesikolo saseMgomanzi egciwa kwa-R1 ebesikhe sasenza late last year. Yes, I believe kudala isebe lisiphinda-phinda lisakha esasikolo, and also nabazali batsho bathi abalikhalazeli isebe because kudala siphindwa siyatshiswa esasikolo. I think inoba amatyeli mathathu bawekho yi-4. But bayakhalaza, basakhala still ngoku bathi kudala i-department ibancedisa because kuthiwa abantwana babo babekwe kwilali engaphesheya, lali leyo inesayo isikolo. And kule nto yokuxabana ke kwelali, so iyabaxhalabisa loo nto leyo. Ingaba mhlawumbi isebe lincamile nalo kwesi sikolo saseMgomanzi, or mhlawumbi thini nje iplan mhlawumbi, because babe-menshine nento yoba the last time sipha if mhlawumbi ke kungaqeshwa i-security, because isabuza uba ingaba mhlawumbi sikhona i-security esilalayo phaa esikolweni. Ngathi babethe asikho ngathi babethe asikho, and ne-case I know I don't know case, but in the case I dihambe le ndawo flat for bakude kubaqwe umuntu ochisana nesi sikolo. So but bayasokola bona kakhulu. Are there any plans maybe?
Thank you.
I'm Chilisila Mapongwana from Algo FM. My question is with regards to the curriculum. I know that there are plans to enroll new subjects into the curriculum. I'm just wondering how the integration of those subjects into the curriculum is going.
Thank you. Let's go the other wing.
Sorry, just a question that I asked earlier which wasn't answered. It relates to the amount of schools in the province, and were there any schools that are closing down? And just a follow-up question on the issue of vandalism. Are there schools that you've highlighted that have been vandalized that won't open on time? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have the last one? Or was he the last one? He was the last one. Can we allow the head of department to shoot again? Thank you very much. When I start the MEC may assist. Thank you. MEC will start. Thank you, Mr. MEC. Shared responsibilities by leadership. I'm saying it.
Yeah, no thanks, Program Director. Let me first start with the issue of Mgomanzi and Butterworth that Abo is raising. Yes, you are correct. That school has been banned almost about 3 times, and the investigating team of the department has been in that particular situation almost for the various 3 consecutive incidents. And what is strange about the banning of the school which is a thorn in the flesh of the department and a bit of a wastage, so to speak, of the resources of the public, is that there are indicators that there are people that are knowledgeable of the incidents. If you go to 2016 one, and but what is also interesting is that people do not want to come and witness formally DDG. They don't want to. But you can build a relationship between the burning of the school and the behavior of the SMEs on the construction industry. You can build that relationship. Out of this, I will share that information with you. So I'm saying it can't be correct that people, when they have got drought of jobs, they must burn properties of government to bypass procurements of government. You see, because if you build it tomorrow, you know what will be the second question that they're going to raise. They're going to tell you that this must be built by a local person. So in essence, ngoku busichisa for baba sakhiwe nguwe obusichisa. So I'm saying there are dynamics in that particular incident which the law enforcement agencies are busy working on it, because we as government, we have got an obligation to provide education there. But equally balance up the desire and the need with at least a value for the money of the public purse. You can't be building school every day. You can't be building a school every day. In essence, you are insulting those that are not bending theirs, and you are insulting them. So I'm saying it's a matter that we are looking into, but very closely with law enforcement agencies. And I agree with you. It's almost 3 times now that we are experiencing that. But the other snag on it, HOD, is that you have got a nearby school, which probably the department has to relocate the kids to, which is a matter that between the district and us, we are busy working with. But at another strategic level, there is that culture most year villages, yoba kuchitwe sethu isikolo, ku-establishwa school why. So unalo dynamic pa. But abafuna owner up ba esisabo ngabo basichithayo. So we must be able now, how do you save these kids under that particular environment? Yenzekayo kula area yasemGomanzi and eZazulwana as well, because that's a close proximity area to them. But on the last question for me, then I will hand it over to the HOD, is the integration of the curriculum. Yes, you are correct. You will forever be revising curriculum as long as you would want a strategic objective to address a particular course. DPE has introduced some new subjects, so that you align what then becomes the demand and the supply of the economy worldwide. For example, in the province we have introduced the 3-streamed model. Why? Precisely because you can't continuously providing a schooling system that produces graduates that are unemployable. You must then bring another innovation that begins to suggest that what are the strategic objectives of government now? And how do you then bring probably interventions that have got a sustainable appetite in responding to the stubborn structure of the economy? If, for example, in the province, the wealth of the people of this province is in the 800 square kilometer ocean coastal belt. So in essence, it means your curriculum will be aligned to that in the next coming 10 to 100 years to come, so that you can be able to tap on what then becomes the prospects of the wealth of the world and wealth of the country in the context of oceans economy. Hence, Tatu Fesha has introduced back now the agricultural schools in the province. Because you can't develop this province outside of the land and agrarian reforms policy and also agricultural and farming kind of an arrangement. Because once you do that, you are going to plunge the province into scarcity of food security. So as those agricultural schools are not just academic institutions, how do they influence the renewal of the economy of the province such that we are able to feed ourselves? We don't buy maize in Free State. Well, we've got land here, but currently we are buying maize from Free State. We can't be buying certain vegetables outside of the province. We've got land and a very good weather and climate of the province, especially on the coastal belt. So I'm saying our schooling system in the province is being revitalized in a manner that begins to talk to the provincial development plan, the national development plan, but also what are the real issues on the ground in the province. You don't have mines here, but you have got land. You don't have mines here, but you have got ocean. You don't have mines here, but you have got big, long rivers with a huge velocity of water that goes to the ocean. But again, the province has got droughts in certain years. Can you see the contradiction? So you have got water, but you have got droughts. So how do you preserve the water that you have that flows to the ocean so that we don't have droughts tomorrow? Tomorrow you are saying Nelson Mandela municipality or metro does not have water. What does that mean? In an area that we have got such a huge velocity of water from the rivers. So I'm saying designing the curriculum is part of trying to bring sense to a reality that you need a particular caliber of citizenry now that can be able to deal with the structured, stubborn economy that we have in the country and in the province in general. So we are busy working on that, and DDG Chwakati can give you more details on that one. Yes, sir.
Mr. MEC, over to you, SG.
No, thanks, Program Director. I think the MEC has covered the Gomanzi issue. Just to add on the issue of the new areas in terms of expanding the curriculum. I think last year the National Department decided to introduce, as part of the maritime schools, they decided to introduce your marine sciences. We've been focusing on the maritime economics as well as nautical sciences. But nautical sciences have got a problem of shortage of educators that have done nautical sciences, because you must have been an officer at sea in order to teach nautical sciences. And it's a struggle to attract those people, because those people are paid dollars in those vessels at sea. And what they earn and what is provided for as part of the education system is just chalk and cheese. And that's why we are struggling to attract those nautical science educators. So the department has since decided that We just need to diversify in terms of the subjects within that space, and they introduced and piloted marine sciences. I think in the Western Cape, there's a consideration to expand that. I'm not sure whether from this year going forward, even to other provinces. But also, the basic education has been having a DBE Mahut to look at new things that must be introduced in the sector. And they have, in the past 2 years, been grappling with the need for us to introduce the 21st century skills that will produce a 21st century learner, but also ensure that institutions of higher learning are able to produce a 21st century educator that must be able to produce that 21st century learner. So the National Department has already started to do a lot of work around that, with a view to review the curriculum to accommodate some of the elements of the basket of 21st century skills that have not been that are not part of the current curriculum. So there's a lot of work that is taking place in that space, including your competency framework, because we must be able to measure those skills that learners must have. In the space of agriculture, at least we have seen also in that space the number of dynamic that are already in place that have been introduced in the space in the agricultural high schools. That will help us and help children to be ready for the opportunities in the sector. One of the things that we are currently working on with some of the industry players, the introduction of agricultural entrepreneurship training. But we are still in discussion with that, and also with the universities, University of Pretoria. We have a partnership with them to introduce agri-technology in our schools. So there's work that the department is working on around that, as a way of ensuring that there is diversification of the curriculum, but at the same time, such that the curriculum will respond to the current needs. On the issues raised by Ronald on the schools that were meant to be closed, we had planned 355 for the current financial year. But the process is so protracted, so we could not move much in terms of that 355, because there's consultation that must take place and so on and so on. The schools that were closed, there was one that was closed in PE, but others, I think 23 of them, closed organically. So either it's a movement of learners, and there are very few learners that are remaining, and that one automatically is closed, and those learners that are remaining are just moved to the nearby school. So there were 23 schools that just closed organically, and 6 other schools were realigned in OR Tambo Inland, and one school in, I think, in Krisani East, a junior secondary was converted into a technical school. So these are the few schools that were able to close. But towards the end of last year, I think in November, we had a meeting with all the stakeholders and members of the ELRC to look at the issue of fast-tracking the rationalization of schools. And we agreed on a plan that we agreed on a plan that must be taken, not driven kakulu at a provincial level, although we'll be coordinating at a provincial level. It will be driven in districts, because that's where schools are, and that's where stakeholders are, that must decide on which school must be closed and which school must remain open from the ones that we have targeted. So we have agreed on that in November, but we are overtaken by events. So we'll ensure that as we start now this academic year, we increase the pace in terms of the issues relating to rationalization of schools. In terms of the vandalized schools, will they be ready? I think it's not major things that have been vandalized. But we need to invest in terms of refurbishment of those schools to be ready, but they'll be able to open. It's not that they've been just ripped off. In majority of cases, they target your electric cables, they target your copper pipes. So that's what is being targeted in these schools, and they target either computer labs. So that's what is majorly targeted by the criminals. But we'll be able to open those schools. Thanks.